Let's rewind a little. All this madness starts in Houston, Jay Prince's turf. This man runs the city like it's his personal empire. The unspoken rule, you check in. Whether you're a rapper, athlete, or Hollywood star, if you land in Houston, you show respect. That's just how it's been. When he made the move to Houston full-time, not just a weekend visit, Jay Prince expected him to follow the rules. But 50? Nah, he wasn't playing that game. He didn't check in. He didn't ask for permission. He didn't kiss any rings.
Buzz Buster is back. This story is one you do not want to miss. The moment 50 Cent arrived in Houston, Texas, a city known as one of rap's most powerful and tightly connected strongholds, he made one decision that would set off a chain reaction. He didn't contact Jay Prince. In Houston, that choice was never going to go unnoticed. Not long after, problems started building. Jewelry disappeared. His image took a public blow. Suddenly, what should have been a routine stop in a major music city turned into something far more serious. Yet the most surprising detail is this: people in Houston were already talking before any of it unfolded. The conversation had started early, long before the situation became visible to everyone else. This wasn't meaningless chatter. It wasn't random online speculation either. It reflected the way Houston operates. The city has its own culture, its own structure, and its own code of respect that carries real weight. Artists, street figures, executives, and influential names all understand it the second they enter that space. No matter how famous you are, no matter what region you come from, the expectation stays the same.
Let's rewind the tape real quick. Houston, Jay Prince's empire, a city he doesn't just represent, he runs. If you're a rapper and you land in H-Town, you're expected to check in, show respect. But let's be real, that check-in sounds a lot like a warning.
When you touch down in H-Town, you make the call. You let Jay Prince know you're there. For years, that has been the standard. Not a publicity move, not an empty gesture. In Houston, it signals awareness, respect, and understanding of how things are handled. Ignore that custom, and the city has a way of responding fast enough to make sure the message lands.
50 Cent, however, moved with full confidence. He believed his stature spoke for itself. From his point of view, his name held enough weight to carry him through any environment. His team was with him, his brand was massive. His reputation had already been built on strength, business instinct, and control. As Curtis Jackson, he wasn't just another rapper passing through. He was a major force in the industry, the face behind G-Unit, and someone used to commanding attention wherever he went. That mindset may have worked in plenty of other places. Houston was different. In that city, influence is not only about charts, fame, or how many people know your records. It is also about understanding local power and recognizing the people who have earned their standing over time.
When 50 made the move to Houston, Jay Prince expected protocol, expected a phone call, a bow of the head, something. But 50, he said, hell no. He wasn't checking in, wasn't asking for permission, he had his own security, his own bag, and he wasn't playing by nobody's street rule book. And then, he didn't just visit Houston. He moved there. He tweeted, loud and proud, I love New York, but I live in Houston now. Everyone thought it was about taxes, but honey, this was more than a financial move. It was a chess move.
That's where this situation shifted. What may have seemed like a small oversight from the outside was viewed very differently within Houston circles. Once those whispers began, the atmosphere changed. The tension didn't come from nowhere. It came from the belief that a major figure had stepped into the city without acknowledging the system that many others had long respected. By the time the trouble became public, the groundwork for it had already been laid in conversation, in perception, and in the quiet rules that outsiders sometimes fail to notice until it is too late. That is what made this story bigger than missing jewelry or damaged optics. At its core, it became a lesson about power, protocol, and the cost of skipping a move that Houston considers essential. In a city with an invisible code, one missed phone call was enough to change everything. He felt he didn't need to justify himself to anybody. On the surface, that kind of self-assurance sounds powerful. In Houston, though, reputation alone doesn't carry the day. What matters there is something far more important: respect. Once that disappears, all eyes turn your way fast.
This wasn't simply about 50 Cent showing up in the city. The real issue was much bigger. At the center of it all was Houston's long-standing check-in culture, a code deeply woven into the city's music world. That code wasn't random, and it wasn't optional in the eyes of many. Its influence traces back to the structure Jay Prince helped establish, a system that made ignoring that rule a serious move.
Plenty of people have had to figure that out the hard way, which raises the bigger questions. Who else crossed that line? And what was happening behind the scenes when 50 Cent made his choice? His decision not to check in set off one of the most discussed moments in Houston hip-hop history.
We have Jay Prince and his Mob Ties crew. Bro, where do we even start? Rather than creating opportunities for the city, Jay Prince has built a career off of terrorizing artists who want to come work in Houston under the guise of protection. After crowning himself as the king of H-Town, Jay Prince took it upon himself to protect artists who came to the city so they wouldn't get robbed. Sounds like a great idea, right? Well, it does until you realize this is all just a cover for an elaborate extortion plot.
To understand why it hit with so much force, you have to slow down and look at the larger picture piece by piece. First, you need to understand Houston itself. This city has its own rhythm, its own hierarchy, and its own rules. Outsiders often see the fame, the success, and the headlines. What they don't always see is the network of loyalty and influence underneath it all. In Houston, those unseen ties can matter more than celebrity. Once you start looking at the city that way, one name keeps rising to the surface. For many people, that name represents the highest level of influence in Houston's music scene and in much of what surrounds it. That man is Jay Prince. Born James Andrew Smith on October 31st, 1964, Jay Prince came up in Houston's Fifth Ward. That neighborhood carried a hard reputation and was often called the Bloody Nickel. His beginnings were far from privileged. There was no comfortable path laid out for him, no powerful mentor guiding each step, and no proven roadmap showing him how to build what he eventually created.
Instead, he came from an environment where survival, awareness, and discipline meant everything. Those early conditions helped shape the image and authority he would later become known for. Over time, Jay Prince grew into more than a music figure. To many, he became a symbol of how power worked in Houston, especially when it came to who had influence, who had protection, and who understood the rules.
Jay Prince and his crew do this thing called checking in, where artists who come to the city have to first go see Jay Prince to pay their respects.
Maybe we need to change the word for the youngsters. The checking in part, is they seem to get hung up on that word checking in.
Yeah.
So if we could diversify that word and bring it up to a 2021.
That's why this story landed so differently. It wasn't just about one artist making one decision. It touched a nerve because it challenged a system that had been understood for years by people inside that world. When 50 Cent chose not to take part in that ritual, the reaction wasn't only about him as an individual. It became a test of how Houston responds when someone with major fame appears to move outside the city's established code. That's what made the moment so explosive. Beneath the headlines was a deeper clash between celebrity confidence and local authority. And in Houston, that kind of clash never stays small for long. He was just a young guy with one goal in mind: make it out of the harsh environment that surrounded him. Long before music ever entered the picture, Jay Prince made his first moves in the car business. On Houston's west side, he created Smith Auto Sales, a dealership where the inventory ranged from regular everyday vehicles to top-tier luxury cars. Soon enough, the lot became more than a place to buy a ride. Athletes showed up. Well-known figures from the streets came through. All kinds of people with influence found their way there. Watching that world up close, Prince picked up an important lesson early. He saw that business wasn't just about what you sold. Real power came from controlling access, deciding who could get close, who could do business, and who had a seat at the table.
They were explaining, they were like, so Jay Prince, people who don't know, is the owner and founder of Rap-A-Lot Records, which is a little bit, it's a historical record label from Houston. They had the Ghetto Boys, a whole bunch of other like dope superstar rappers from the South, that Scarface, and a bunch of dudes that, pioneered.
Yeah, literally pioneered.
Being such a powerhouse in
Houston, being
hip-hop.
the mecca of
yeah,
powerhouse.
But for people who don't know, Houston was the mecca for Southern rap before Atlanta.
LA.
That understanding changed everything.
By 1986, he took that same sharp business instinct and pushed into the music industry, launching Rap-A-Lot Records. At the time, much of the attention in hip-hop was centered elsewhere. Other regions dominated the conversation, while Southern rap was often overlooked. Jay Prince recognized that opening immediately. Rather than wait for the industry to catch up, he built a platform himself. What he created didn't just fill a gap, it shifted the landscape. Rap-A-Lot became one of the first labels to put a real spotlight on Southern hip-hop and proved that talent from Houston and the South deserved national attention.
Prince wasn't following trends. He was building something with lasting impact, piece by piece, artist by artist, until the label became impossible to ignore. The lineup alone tells the story. Ghetto Boys helped define the label's reputation and gave it a raw, unforgettable identity. Scarface became one of the most respected voices in rap. Willie D and Bushwick Bill added even more presence to a roster that kept getting stronger. Then came more names that deepened the legacy. UGK's Bun B and Pimp C, Z-Ro, Trey the Truth, and Devin the Dude. One after another, major Southern artists became connected to Rap-A-Lot and to the empire J. Prince was building behind the scenes.
When you think about early Texas rap, you gotta go back to the early Rap-A-Lot days with acts like Royal Flush, Raheem, and the original Ghetto Boys, which initially was Sir Jukebox, Sir Rap-A-Lot, and Prince Johnny C.
What started with cars on the west side of Houston turned into something far bigger than a business. It became influence. It became cultural reach. It became a foundation that helped change the direction of rap music, especially for the South. J. Prince saw value where others missed it, moved early when others hesitated, and built a name that kept expanding far beyond the dealership lot where it all began.
What J. Prince was creating went far beyond a typical label. People on the outside often miss that. This was bigger than music deals and artist rosters. It functioned like an entire machine, a powerful network where music, reputation, influence, and real-world authority all worked together. His role stretched far past paperwork and business meetings. On one evening, he might be helping calm dangerous tensions in Houston's 3rd Ward. Hours later, he could be seated in a major label boardroom, speaking with top executives about serious business. Very few people could move between those two environments with that kind of ease. J. Prince did it naturally, and over time, he earned credibility on both sides. By the early 2000s, his reputation had outgrown Houston. He was no longer viewed as only a hometown figure with a strong local name. His influence had expanded to a national level, and people across the industry understood that his connections mattered. He had become someone who could open doors, shape conversations, and bring the right people together at the right moment. One of the clearest examples was his part in connecting Drake with Lil Wayne through his son, J. Prince Jr. That link helped create one of the most important opportunities in modern rap. It showed that his value wasn't just in what he built for himself, but also in how he positioned others for major breakthroughs when timing mattered most. Whenever public conflict started taking over headlines, his name often entered the conversation. During high-profile moments, including the dispute involving Meek Mill and Drake, artists looked to him for direction. That says a lot. In an industry filled with egos, pressure, and constant competition, being the person others trust when things get complicated is a rare kind of power.
If it's anything that needs to change is, man, leave them damn fools in the hood. You know what I mean? Y'all know the ones that's damn fools before you bring them out to, leave them in the hood, because all the muscle and meanness and all that fighting shit in the world ain't nothing, man. You know what I mean? When it comes to a thinker. Right. You know what I mean? That little man, he was 5'2", and a whole lot of little nigga, you can't impose no muscle.
Throughout music and beyond, J. Prince developed a reputation as someone who could steady the room when tensions rose. He was seen as a fixer, a unifier, and a major force in shaping outcomes behind the scenes. Not everyone holds that kind of position. It takes influence, trust, timing, and a presence people are willing to listen to. So when difficult situations surfaced, who was often expected to step in? Someone with real weight in the culture. Someone whose words could shift the energy and whose involvement immediately changed the stakes. That was the level J. Prince had reached. With influence like that, his presence meant something long before he ever said a word. Every place has its own unwritten code. The moment someone steps into that environment, they can usually feel it. Even if nobody says a word, there's a certain way people move, communicate, and show awareness of who really matters in that city. One of the biggest parts of that code is something people often dismiss too quickly: checking in. At first glance, some see it as an old custom that no longer matters. In reality, it still carries a lot of meaning, especially in places where influence runs deep through both the public-facing business world and the streets behind it. In certain cities, a single individual, or sometimes a small circle, has real pull. Their name means something in multiple spaces. They may have connections in entertainment, nightlife,
local business, and community networks all at once. Because of that, when someone with major visibility comes into town, there's often an expectation that they make contact. This usually applies to people with status and recognition. Think rappers, label figures, executives, celebrities, or anyone whose presence is likely to be noticed. Before making moves, they send a message to the person who holds weight locally. It doesn't have to be dramatic. Sometimes it's as simple as saying, "I'm here." That brief message can change everything.
Why does it matter so much? Because it signals respect. It tells the city's established figures that you understand the structure already in place and that you're not trying to move carelessly through someone else's territory. That acknowledgement can immediately create a layer of comfort around your presence. Once that line of communication is opened, people start to view you differently. Now there's a connection. Now there's context. Others know your arrival isn't random and that somebody important is aware of where you are and what you're doing. That can lead to smoother interactions, stronger support, and unexpected opportunities that might never appear otherwise. Relationships form faster when trust enters the room early. Ignore that step though, and the whole atmosphere can shift in an instant. For starters, your arrival may catch everyone off guard. Nobody relevant knows you're there, which means no groundwork has been laid. There's no support system in motion, no one prepared to guide things, and no one positioned to help smooth over issues if they come up. That creates a second problem. If something unexpected happens, there may be no immediate network around you. Without that local connection, you could find yourself navigating unfamiliar dynamics alone, and that's rarely a strong position for anyone with a public profile. More than anything, skipping the check-in can be interpreted as disrespect. Whether that was the intention or not, people may read it as ignoring the way that city operates. In places where influence and reputation matter, that kind of oversight doesn't go unnoticed.
He built the G-Unity Business Lab, teaching high school students how to build businesses from the ground up. Houston wasn't just his new home, it became his playground. Then came the deals. His liquor brand partnered with the Rockets, the Astros, and the Texans. 3 major sports franchises in one city. That's legacy work.
What seems like a small gesture on the surface can carry major consequences behind the scenes. That's why checking in isn't just tradition, it's strategy, it's awareness. It's a simple move that shows you understand the environment before trying to move through it. Some people move like their reputation is a passport, as if fame alone lets them walk into any city and do whatever they please. In certain places, that mindset can create serious problems fast. For years in Houston, Jay Prince has represented the opposite way of thinking. He hasn't hidden his position either. He's spoken about it in interviews, and he laid it out clearly in his book, The Art and Science of Respect. Even that title tells you everything you need to know. Respect, in this view, is not something casual. It isn't luck, and it isn't automatic. It's intentional. It's calculated. It comes from understanding how to carry yourself and how to deal with people the right way. Once that respect is missing, the atmosphere changes. What was smooth can suddenly become tense. When people ignore that reality, complications usually aren't far behind. This isn't just advice aimed at new artists trying to break through, or lesser-known names working for recognition. The expectation reaches much higher than that. Big stars are included. Powerful executives are included. Even the people arriving with money, influence, and private flights are included too. The standard does not shift just because someone is famous. It does not bend because a person has status. In that environment, the rules stay the rules. Picture landing in a city where celebrity does not automatically open every door. Imagine showing up with a full security detail and still realizing that protection, wealth, and name value do not replace local understanding. In Houston, that message has long been part of the culture surrounding power and respect. No one gets a special exemption. No one is considered above the code. That's what makes it so striking. A person's profile may be massive. Their brand may carry weight around the world. Their reputation may make people move differently everywhere else. Still, the moment they touch down in Houston, the same expectation remains in place. Check in.
When 50 made the move to Houston, Jay Prince expected protocol, expected a phone call, a bow of the head, something. But 50, he said, hell no. He wasn't checking in, wasn't asking for permission. He had his own security, his own bag, and he wasn't playing by nobody's street rule book. And then he didn't just visit Houston. He moved there. He tweeted, loud and proud, I love New York, but I live in Houston now. Everyone thought it was about taxes, but honey, this was more than a financial move. It was a chess move.
Not always written out, and it may not be announced publicly, but it's understood.
That principle has traveled through the city for years, passed along through experience, relationships, and the way people learn how things operate. More than a simple gesture, it reflects awareness. It shows that someone recognizes the landscape, the history, and the people who hold influence there. At its core, this is about more than ego. It's about reading the room before making moves. It's about knowing that every city has its own rhythm, its own structure, and its own unwritten rules. Houston, as J. Prince has long made clear, is one of those places where respect is expected to be shown on purpose, not by accident. Houston has shown this pattern again and again, not with speeches, but through what happens on the ground. Whether J. Prince personally stepped into a situation or not, the weight of his name, along with the environment tied to his influence, has long shaped the rules of the city. In that world, skipping the proper introduction can send a message. It signals that you're moving without support, without alignment, and in a place as connected and powerful as Houston, that can create problems fast. This isn't just a rumor people repeat for drama. For years, stories have circulated about artists learning that lesson in real time. 50 Cent is often brought up as one example, but his name is only part of a much bigger pattern. Similar situations have reportedly happened more than once, and every retelling has only added to the larger image surrounding J. Prince, an image built on influence, reputation, and the level of respect attached to his presence.
Among the stories people mention most, one stands out immediately: Jay-Z. His name always gets attention, which is exactly why this kind of story has to be handled carefully. With situations like these, facts and gossip tend to get mixed together almost instantly. One detail gets repeated, another gets exaggerated, and before long it becomes difficult to separate what was actually said from what people assumed happened behind the scenes. That's why the confirmed part matters most. During a podcast conversation with Nori and DJ EFN, J. Prince addressed the topic himself. He described a visit Jay-Z made to Houston, saying Jay checked into the Ritz-Carlton, a high-end hotel, but did not formally check in with the city's established network. According to J. Prince, there was no outreach, no acknowledgement, and no effort to follow what many saw as the understood protocol. He didn't frame it with chaos or loud threats. Instead, he spoke in the measured way he's known for, which only made the story feel more significant. The message wasn't delivered with noise, it was delivered with control. That calm tone gave the impression that in Houston, the rules didn't need to be shouted to be understood. They were already in place. What makes this story linger is bigger than one visit or one celebrity. It speaks to a long-standing belief that some cities operate on their own code, especially when major names arrive. In Houston, people often describe that code as something you ignore at your own risk, not because every situation turns into open conflict, but because bypassing the structure can be seen as disrespectful, and disrespect in a city with deep ties can carry consequences nobody planned for.
So when people talk about J. Prince's reach, they aren't just talking about one man. They're talking about an entire standard, one that has been reinforced through stories, moments, and warnings repeated over time. The Jay-Z example remains one of the most discussed because it sits right at the intersection of confirmed comments and public speculation, and that's exactly why it continues to fascinate people. Jay-Z's trip apparently came with complications. J. Prince didn't offer much, only saying there were issues tied to protocol before moving on. That brief comment opened the door to a much bigger conversation. Naturally, people started asking what protocol really meant. Was Jay-Z's camp unprepared for how things were supposed to be handled? Did his team overlook a step that carried more weight than they realized? Or was there another layer to it, something more personal and far less obvious? No clear answer has ever fully surfaced, and that uncertainty is exactly what keeps the story alive. Speculation has surrounded this moment for years. Every retelling adds another question, another theory, another reason for people to revisit it. The facts remain limited, yet the reputation around Houston only grows stronger. In that city, influence carries history, and respect is not treated like a formality. It is something earned, recognized, and expected. What makes the whole situation even more striking is how avoidable it seems. By all accounts, something as simple as one phone call might have changed everything. One small move could have smoothed things over before any tension had a chance to build. Instead, the details stayed hidden, and the silence became part of the story. That's often how these situations unfold when major names are involved. Once powerful people enter the picture, the full version rarely comes out in public. Pieces are hinted at. Certain facts remain behind closed doors. The public is left to read between the lines, while those closest to it say very little. Even with all of that mystery, one point stands out unmistakably. Jay-Z, a giant in music and one of the most respected names in the industry, was still not beyond Houston standards. That says a lot. It shows that status alone does not automatically override the city's unwritten rules. More importantly, it reveals something about J. Prince and the world around him.
I got calls that he was in the airport, right?
Okay.
I mean, imagine that
All
shit,
right.
right?
I like that.
I would know shit when you land.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it's that deep, right?
Yeah.
A long story short, right? Long story short, he pursued his situation, right? Mm-hmm. And he was in the Ritz-Carlton, from what I hear. Mm-hmm. And it didn't go well for him because he didn't do shit protocol-wise.
Wow.
This was never a story about unknown artists trying to get noticed or local names competing for relevance. The people connected to this moment were operating at the highest level imaginable. We're talking about global stars, major business interests, and brands worth extraordinary amounts of money. Still, that kind of reach does not erase the expectations that come with stepping into certain spaces. Fame may open doors, and money may create influence, but neither one guarantees automatic acceptance everywhere. In Houston, reputation matters, relationships matter, showing proper respect matters. That is why this story continues to resonate. It is not just about what may or may not have happened during one visit. It is about the larger message behind it. In some circles, there is a code that cannot be ignored, no matter how famous the person is. And when that code is tied to a city with its own deep-rooted culture and power structure, even the biggest names in the world are expected to understand it. In this city, respect is not optional. It's part of the culture. And anyone stepping into that world is expected to understand it quickly.
Take Tekashi 6ix9ine as an example. In 2018, during South by Southwest in Austin, he came through Texas without moving the way many believed he should. Even though he had security connections tied to 50 Cent Circle, plenty of people in hip-hop saw his actions as a slight toward J. Prince and the reputation surrounding his name. Before long, the atmosphere shifted. What may have seemed like a local dispute stopped being local at all. The tension grew fast, and the situation stretched beyond Texas, pulling in bigger names, bigger conversations, and far more attention than anyone may have expected. In time, the fallout was connected to the major legal case involving 6ix9ine's crew in New York, turning a regional clash into a national headline that rattled the rap industry. That's how powerful this influence really is. From Jay-Z at the Ritz, to 6ix9ine's visit to Austin, to lesser-known figures who found themselves in trouble in H-Town over the years, the same lesson keeps repeating itself. Houston has its own code. People who ignore it often learn the hard way that this is not a city where you can just show up, move carelessly, and expect everything to go smoothly. At the center of that reputation is J. Prince. His presence carries weight, whether people admit it openly or not. He's not the kind of figure the industry can casually overlook, and history has shown that issues have a way of circling back sooner or later. Now, shift the focus to 50 Cent. He's another name nobody dismisses. His story is built on endurance. Time after time, he's made it through moments that could have ended someone else's run completely, only to return sharper, stronger, and even more difficult to count out. Few artists have carried a tougher image than 50 Cent. For years, he stood near the top of hip-hop as a bold, hard-to-shake figure, going head-to-head with names like Ja Rule, Rick Ross, and Kanye West. Pressure never seemed to rattle him. Speaking directly was part of his brand, and backing down rarely looked like an option. That same attitude followed him everywhere. When he stepped into Houston, he appeared to move with the same confidence that had protected him in so many other situations. Status, fame, and a powerful name can make someone feel untouchable. Yet that kind of confidence can also blur the bigger picture. Even the most respected figures can misread a place they don't fully know. A reputation might carry weight in one world, but it doesn't automatically open every door. One common mistake powerful people make is assuming recognition alone will keep things smooth. The thinking is simple. Everyone knows who I am, so no one will test me. In unfamiliar territory, though, that assumption can fall apart fast. Houston played by its own code. Influence there wasn't only about celebrity or money. Local relationships mattered. Long-standing respect mattered.
The city had its own structure, its own expectations, and its own quiet rules that outsiders were expected to understand before making a move. When 50 Cent arrived, he didn't come casually. His team was with him and security was in place. Everything about the visit reflected his stature. He checked into the Ritz-Carlton, a setting that matched the profile of a major star, the kind of luxury that fits someone used to operating at the highest level. On the surface, it looked like business as usual. Still, one detail changed everything. Before settling in, there was no simple outreach, no message sent ahead, no acknowledgement to the people who held influence on the ground. Most importantly, there was no sign of respect offered to J. Prince's circle.
That wasn't a minor oversight. In Houston, gestures like that carried real meaning. This wasn't the kind of city where a celebrity could just show up, rely on name recognition, and expect everything to fall neatly into place. There was a local order, and ignoring it could send a message, whether that was the intention or not. What made the moment so striking was the contrast. Here was Curtis Jackson, known everywhere as fearless, disciplined, and impossible to intimidate, walking into a city where fame alone wasn't the top currency. The same confidence that helped build his legend may have led him to underestimate the importance of local respect.
He finally said it himself. Houston didn't embrace me the way I expected, y'all. That wasn't just disappointment, that was the warning. He didn't feel safe anymore, and guess who else didn't like how things were playing out? J. Prince. Insiders say he was fuming, watching 50 make moves in his city, soaking up the spotlight without ever bowing down. That hit his ego hard. This was no longer about publicity, it was about power, about who controlled the streets.
That's where the story takes a sharp turn. Because in Houston, the issue wasn't whether he was famous. Nobody was confused about who he was. The real issue was whether he recognized where he was, who mattered there, and what was expected before making an entrance. In some places, power announces itself loudly. In others, it moves quietly, through relationships, history, and signals that outsiders ignore at their own risk. It starts the second a major name enters the city and skips the expected call. In a place like Houston, that kind of move never stays quiet for long. Information travels fast because the circles are close, the connections are deep, and people are always paying attention. Wack 100 even described phones lighting up as soon as 50 Cent touched down. Before he had time to settle in, word was already circulating that he was in town and hadn't checked in with the right people. That's when the situation took a turn everyone still talks about. As 50 moved through the hotel without showing the local respect that many say matters in Houston, someone managed to get close enough to take his chain and jewelry. In one instant, the city's warning was delivered loud and clear. Fame didn't shield him, status didn't protect him. Around Houston, respect and protocol carry real weight, and ignoring that can bring immediate consequences. For people familiar with the city, none of this felt like a mystery. Houston has its own code, and those who know it understand exactly how seriously it's taken. When those unwritten rules are ignored, the response can come quickly. That's the bigger point behind this story. It wasn't only about a piece of jewelry, it was about what happens when someone enters a place with an established culture and moves like those expectations don't apply. More importantly, this didn't come across as some meaningless accident. Looking at the timing alone raises bigger questions. A globally recognized artist doesn't usually get followed so closely by chance, especially while surrounded by security. That takes awareness. It takes coordination. It takes somebody knowing where he is, how he's moving, and when the right opening might appear. Regular people don't just track every step of someone at that level, wait for the exact moment, and make a move with that kind of precision. Not in a situation like this, not with so many eyes around. The way it unfolded suggested something more deliberate, more calculated, and far less spontaneous than it may have appeared on the surface. That's why this moment stuck with so many people. It wasn't simply shocking because 50 Cent is famous. It stood out because it seemed to reflect a larger message about how the city operates. In Houston, reputation matters, but local respect matters too. If someone arrives and skips the customs that others treat as essential, people notice immediately. Once that word spreads, everything can shift fast. Seen that way, the incident felt less like random chaos and more like a statement. The message was unmistakable. No one is bigger than the environment they step into. In Houston, the rules are understood even when they aren't spoken out loud. Ignore them, and the response can be swift. That's what made this episode feel so serious, and that's why people still bring it up today. This is what happens when the city's rules get brushed aside. Nothing about a move like this comes down to chance. It takes discipline, timing, and a level of coordination that only works when every detail is mapped out in advance. The people involved have to know the exact moment to move, the exact place to be, and who is exposed. Behind all of that sits a reliable circle of insiders already tracking who has arrived, where they're staying, and when their guard is lowest. Without that key connection to J. Prince's crew, the usual layer of protection simply wasn't there. Ignoring that kind of established protocol didn't just raise eyebrows, it created an opening. From that point on, everything began lining up in a way that was hard to dismiss. The more you compare each part of the story, the less it feels like confusion, and the more it looks deliberate.
50 Cent didn't just happen to be in Houston at that moment. He was there within a very specific window. Location matters too. This didn't unfold at some distant, unrelated place across town. It happened close to where he was staying, right in the area connected to him. For a lot of people watching from the outside, that detail stood out immediately. It suggested intention, not accident. Another part of the story drew just as much attention: the silence that followed. That may have been the most surprising piece of all. 50 Cent has built a reputation on saying exactly what he thinks, especially when tension starts building. He usually turns conflict into conversation, and conversation into headlines. Social media, interviews, music, public reactions, he's often the first to step into the spotlight and make sure his side is heard. This time, though, there was a complete shift. No immediate posts, no constant commentary, no fast response designed to dominate the narrative. That sudden quiet felt unusual, especially coming from someone known for never letting a moment like this pass without addressing it in some way. For many observers, that absence of noise became its own statement. When a person known for public reactions chooses not to react, people notice. Questions start multiplying. Was the situation more serious than it first appeared? Did the circumstances speak so loudly that no extra words were needed? Or did that silence reflect an understanding that this wasn't the kind of...
J. Prince and his crew do this thing called checking in, where artists who come to the city have to first go see J. Prince to pay their respects.
Maybe we need to change the word for the youngsters. The checking in part, is they seem to get hung up on that word, checking in.
Yeah.
So if we could diversify that word and bring it up to a 2021.
Taken together, the details paint a picture that feels far more structured than random. The timeline, the location, the missing connection, and the unusually quiet aftermath all push the same idea forward. To many, it didn't look like disorder. It looked like a sequence. One step led to the next, and once that pattern became visible, it was hard to unsee.
That's why this segment keeps drawing attention. On the surface, it may seem like another chaotic moment. Look closer, and it starts to resemble something else entirely. A carefully set stage, a missed protocol, and a reaction so restrained that it made the whole thing even more revealing. There was no public reply whatsoever. That silence spoke louder than any post, interview, or song ever could. Usually, when 50 Cent has something to say, everyone hears it. He tends to take charge of the moment, dominate the headlines, and shape how the story is told. Silence, though, creates a very different impression. It suggests he recognized the signal immediately and understood that a typical response would not change anything. This clearly was not the kind of situation you settle online or answer through music. The stakes felt far bigger. It pointed to something operating under a completely separate set of rules, where public words carry far less influence. 50 seemed to realize that right away. He appeared to understand that this was not casual noise. It was a serious message, and he knew exactly how significant the moment was. Rather than turning it into a loud public spectacle, J. Prince moved in a completely different way. He did not escalate things. He stayed composed, acknowledged the situation for what it was, and continued forward without feeding the drama. That approach says a lot on its own. In moments where many people would rush to defend themselves or fire back, staying calm can reveal just as much as speaking out. To really understand why all of this carries so much weight, you have to look at J. Prince's history. His background adds another layer to the story,
and helps explain why people read so much into moments like this. His name has surfaced repeatedly over the years in connection with major investigations, which only adds to the mystique around him.
Back in the 1990s, federal authorities examined aspects of his business activity. On the surface, that might sound straightforward, but the full picture is more complicated. In a surprising turn, some of the officials connected to those investigations were later convicted of misconduct. That detail changed how many people viewed the entire situation. It raised larger questions about what was really happening behind the scenes and whether the scrutiny itself had been handled properly. For observers, that history became part of the bigger narrative surrounding J. Prince. His name was not just linked to controversy, but also to a system where power, influence, and accountability did not always appear simple or clean. That is why moments like this are rarely seen as ordinary celebrity tension. There is a deeper context attached to them. People are not just reacting to one exchange or one silence. They are reacting to years of reputation, history, and unanswered questions that continue to follow these figures. Seen through that lens, 50's lack of a public response feels even more telling. It wasn't just restraint, it looked like recognition. He seemed to understand the environment, the message, and the fact that not every challenge is meant to be answered in public. Sometimes the loudest move is saying nothing at all. For decades, J. Prince has moved with a level of power that most people only hear about in whispers. His reach runs deep, and his influence speaks long before he ever has to. Public outbursts, online arguments, and flashy reactions are not part of his style. He doesn't jump on social media to make noise, and he rarely puts anything on display for the crowd.
Instead, the way things are handled around him is far more controlled. 100 summed that up during one intense Clubhouse exchange, painting a picture of how matters get resolved without spectacle. No grand performance, no back and forth for the internet. Just quiet conversations, the proper people involved, and the issue addressed where it needs to be addressed. That detail matters more than people realize. Entering a space like that without first reading the room is not simply disrespectful, it signals something bigger. It shows a lack of awareness about how that environment works and about the rules nobody has to say out loud because everyone connected already understands them. In circles built on reputation, relationships, and hierarchy, missing those signals can create very real problems. The pattern is what makes this stand out. Time after time, certain names come up, and so does a familiar location. Whether the conversation turns to J. Prince or 50 Cent, the Ritz in Houston keeps appearing as a key backdrop. Different people, different situations, yet somehow the same setting keeps returning, and so does the same takeaway. Walking into that world without proper respect, without acknowledgement of who carries weight there, tends to bring consequences. What makes it even more striking is how subtle J. Prince appears to be in all of it. There are no dramatic announcements, no detailed explanations laid out in public, and no obvious campaign to send a warning. Still, the message travels. It moves the old-fashioned way, through conversations, through trusted voices, through people who know how information really spreads when the stakes are high.
I got calls that he was in the airport, right?
Okay.
I mean,
right.
Imagine that
All
shit,
right.
right?
I like that.
I would know shit when you land,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Because it's that deep, right?
Yeah.
A long story short, right? Long story short, he pursued his situation, right? And he was in a Ritz-Carlton, from what I hear. And it didn't go well for him because he didn't do shit protocol-wise.
Wow. That's why moments like WAC 100 speaking about those airport calls hit so differently. Suddenly, separate stories start to line up. Pieces that may have sounded random at first began to connect. The quiet approach, the private communication, the sense that everyone important somehow gets the message without a press release or a viral post, it all starts to make sense. Once those stories began circulating, this stopped being just a Houston topic. The conversation expanded fast. What may have started as local knowledge turned into something much bigger. And before long, the entire hip-hop world seemed to understand what was being implied. Artists were paying attention, managers were listening, executives were hearing the same things. The industry caught on because the signal was impossible to ignore, even without anyone spelling it out directly. That's really the lesson running through all of this. In some circles, power doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need to.
The structure is already there, and the people who understand it know exactly how to move. Those who don't usually learn the hard way that silence can say far more than noise ever could. People were paying attention, and for good reason. This was never only about a single moment involving 50 Cent. It pointed to something much bigger, the way certain places, especially Houston, operate by their own code. In that environment, respect matters, order matters, relationships matter. Those things carry real influence, and that reality deserved a much wider spotlight. Smart people don't just show up blindly when they enter a new city. Every move is usually made with purpose. Long before anyone arrives, conversations are already happening in private. Calls get made, teams connect, details are sorted out before the plane even lands. None of it is done for attention. The goal is simple. Make sure there's mutual respect and a clear understanding of how things are handled locally.
Once you reach that level, success isn't measured only by celebrity or money. Awareness becomes just as important. Knowing the room, knowing the people, and knowing the unspoken rules can matter more than anything the public sees on the surface. That's what gave this story its real weight. What made it even more compelling was the way 50 Cent responded after everything happened. There was no public spectacle, no back and forth, no attempt to turn the situation into a media circus. That choice said more than any statement could have. It showed that he recognized the bigger picture and understood what the moment actually meant. Silence can be incredibly powerful. Sometimes the strongest response is restraint. Instead of adding noise, he let the moment stand on its own. That quiet approach became the message. Without saying much at all, he made people look closer and think harder about what was really going on. As a result, the story pulled people in even more. It pushed audiences to ask better questions and look beyond the obvious headline. Fans rarely get access to the deeper layers of how the industry actually works, and this moment offered a rare glimpse behind that curtain. It reminded people that there are systems in place, expectations that aren't always spoken, and dynamics that outsiders may never fully understand at first glance. Every city comes with its own culture, its own standards, and its own way of doing things. Some places are more direct about it than others. Houston stood out here because its identity felt unmistakable. The message was clear. If you enter that space, you need to understand what matters there. It's not only about who you are, it's also about how you move, who you speak to, and whether you recognize the structure already in place.
That's why this moment stayed with people. On the surface, it may have looked small. Underneath, it revealed something much larger about power, awareness, and the importance of reading the room. For those paying close attention, it wasn't just a story, it was a lesson. If you miss the subtle dynamics at play, everything can shift before you even realize it. That's a big reason this story refuses to fade. It wasn't only the people attached to it that made it unforgettable. What really gave it staying power was the glimpse it offered into how power can move quietly, away from public view. None of this felt accidental. Each decision seemed deliberate, almost like every moment carried a purpose beyond the surface. In situations like this, what happens in public often sends a signal in private. Those incidents turn into warnings, examples, and unspoken lessons for the next artist, executive, or major figure thinking about making moves in Houston. What happened involving 50 Cent was never seen as some isolated episode. For a lot of observers, it became a clear marker. Anyone paying close attention understood that it represented something bigger than one uncomfortable moment. It showed how certain environments operate by their own rules, regardless of fame, status, or outside assumptions. The story became even more revealing once people started reacting to it. That response alone exposed a divide in how different groups understood the situation. Beyond Houston, many people were simply stunned. Fans who had watched 50 Cent build his name, navigate pressure, and maintain a powerful image had trouble making sense of it. Industry figures who were familiar with his track record felt the same way.
The question kept coming up again and again. How could someone with that kind of presence, protection, and reputation be caught off balance at all? To those looking in from the outside, it didn't add up. By their standards, someone like 50 should have been untouchable in a situation like this. Houston tells a different story. Once you start understanding how things function there, the confusion begins to fade. The city has its own structure, its own codes, and its own way of handling influence. In that setting, a public image can only carry you so far. Security helps, reputation matters,
and status opens doors. But none of those things automatically place someone above the local dynamics already in motion. That's the part many people missed. They were looking at the situation through a national lens, measuring it by celebrity, success, and visibility. Houston wasn't responding to those standards. It was operating on something deeper, something rooted in relationships, history, and the kind of authority that isn't always obvious to outsiders. By this stage, one thing had become impossible to ignore. The rules change depending on where you are. What protects you in one city may mean very little in another. The same name that commands respect elsewhere might not carry the same weight once it enters a space with its own power structure. That's why this story keeps resurfacing. It wasn't just dramatic, it was revealing. Beneath the headlines was a much larger lesson about how influence actually works when the cameras aren't controlling the narrative. And once that reality comes into focus, the entire situation starts to look very different. In some places, image is everything. A big name, a strong reputation, and the right introduction can open nearly any door. Houston, though, has always moved differently.
Out there, influence isn't only about celebrity. Flash and fame don't automatically earn respect. J. Prince's circle represents something deeper, something established long before outsiders arrive. There's already a structure in place, a system people understand without needing it spelled out. Anyone who steps into that world without being connected to it is basically moving like a guest, unaware of the codes that help keep everything in balance. This situation isn't unusual either. Versions of it keep resurfacing. The names may change, the circumstances may shift, but the lesson stays the same every single time. Eventually, the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. Houston has its own order, and people who overlook that usually learn the hard way that the city doesn't operate like everywhere else. What really stood out in this whole situation, though, wasn't just the tension around it. The most revealing part was 50's reaction, or more specifically, how carefully he chose to respond. Once 50 finally spoke on J. Prince and the whole idea of checking in, he didn't come out swinging with loud statements or unnecessary pressure. There was no chaotic outburst, no reckless escalation, no attempt to turn the moment into a bigger public showdown. Instead, he handled it with control. Every part of his response felt intentional, calm, and precise. That matters, because backing all the way off was never really his style. He's not known for disappearing from conflict or pretending an issue doesn't exist. At the same time, he also didn't add fuel to the situation. Rather than push things further, he seemed to recognize exactly what kind of ground he was standing on.
More importantly, 50 appeared to understand that going at J. Prince wasn't the same as trading shots with somebody from New York or Los Angeles. Those are completely different arenas with completely different rules. Houston carries its own rhythm, its own energy, and its own unwritten expectations. People familiar with that environment already know there are lines you don't cross casually. That's what made his response so interesting. It wasn't fear, and it wasn't surrender. It looked more like awareness. He understood the landscape, read the room, and adjusted accordingly. In a story filled with ego, status, and questions about respect, that kind of restraint said more than a dramatic rant ever could. At the center of all this is a larger truth. Every city has power players, but not every city treats outside fame as the highest form of power. Houston has long been seen as a place where local structure means something real. If you arrive assuming your name alone is enough, you may quickly find out otherwise. That's why this story keeps repeating itself. People see the spotlight, but they miss the framework behind it. The ones who last are usually the ones who notice the difference early. And in this case, 50 seemed to understand that message perfectly before things had any chance to spiral further. J. Prince doesn't operate for applause, internet attention, or public back and forth. His decisions are usually made away from the spotlight, with patience, calculation, and a clear purpose behind them. Because of that, even someone as outspoken and fearless as 50 Cent seemed to understand that Texas was not the place to test boundaries or create unnecessary friction. Tony Yayo, however, took a more direct approach. As one of 50's closest allies and a longtime G-Unit figure, he didn't hide how he viewed the situation. From his perspective, it seemed less like simple respect and more like navigating a certain level of pressure, shaped by the quiet expectations that come with being in that environment. His comments reflected how an outsider might interpret the atmosphere when stepping into a city with its own established order. Still, there's an important layer to this story that many people outside Houston often fail to see. Looking at it only through that lens misses the deeper reality of how the city's culture works. J. Prince's influence has never really been centered on calling people out over formalities or creating consequences over missed introductions. What he represents is something much larger than that. At the heart of it, his network has long functioned as one of the strongest pillars in Houston's hip-hop community. For decades, that structure has helped hold things together behind the scenes. Rather than feeding tension, it has often served as a stabilizing force in moments when situations could have easily become more serious. J. Prince has repeatedly been viewed as someone who can step in, lower the temperature, and keep matters from spinning in the wrong direction. That role carries weight, especially in a music scene where pride, reputation, and regional loyalty can quickly complicate things. Houston's balance didn't happen by accident. It was maintained over time by people who understood how to protect relationships, diffuse conflict, and preserve a sense of order in spaces where emotions could have taken over.
Many observers overlook just how valuable that kind of presence can be until it's gone. What seems from the outside like pressure or silent rules may in reality be part of a long-standing system that helped keep the local scene steady and unified through difficult moments. Without that backbone, the city's hip-hop landscape might have faced a far more unstable path. As this part of the story comes to an end, one thing stands out clearly. Every city moves by its own code, and every circle is built on its own foundation. Sometimes, the people with the most influence are not the loudest ones in the room. Often, they're the ones shaping the outcome without ever needing to announce it. The person making the most noise rarely comes out on top. In many cases, real respect doesn't grow from flashy confrontations or public showdowns. It's built through calm confidence, patience, and the kind of wisdom that speaks without demanding attention. That quiet force sits at the heart of Houston's story, and it may be the most revealing part of all. What makes this so compelling is how it challenges the usual idea of power. Strength isn't always loud. Influence doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes the people who leave the deepest mark are the ones who carry themselves with steady purpose and let their actions do the talking. If this series pulled you in, make sure to leave a like and subscribe for more hidden stories and deeper breakdowns. Pass this along to anyone who enjoys uncovering the details most people miss. Head to the comments and share your take, because the way respect is earned can look very different depending on the place, the people, and the culture around it. I'd love to know where you stand. Thanks for being here, and stick around. There's a lot more still to come.